The Sober Sojourns 12 Steps and Passport Stamps podcast features recovered men and women who are practicing members of Alcoholics Anonymous. We do not claim to represent Alcoholics Anonymous or any 12 step program. We are friends gathered to discuss our experience in recovery. The discussions in this podcast represent our own individual experiences and opinions as of today.
You can reach us at our email address, sobersojournspodcast@gmail.com, or Instagram at OyveyAA and at Sally. We would love to hear from you. Our aim is to try and be helpful by sharing the realities of our recovery, how we have recovered, and are trudging the road of happy destiny wherever we go.
Pirate Mike and OyveyAA presents The Sober Sojourns 12 Steps and Passport Stamps podcast.
Welcome back to Sober Sojourns. I'm one of your co-hosts, Pirate Mike.
And I'm OyveyAA.
And great to see you, as always. I'm looking forward to this because I feel like it's going to be, I'm looking forward to the education that it's going to give me as we do an episode on more about Tel Aviv.
Just to preface this, I feel like this is funny because we just spent the last 30 minutes talking about just like life, and we divulged into like philosophical territory of like just love and Judaism and souls and heartache, and now we're moving to the Middle Eastern capital of Tel Aviv. Also,
the Middle Eastern capital of Tel Aviv.
I think this episode is gonna be just the existence of doing something about Israel can, stir some people up. But in case anyone has not noticed yet, I was born there. I didn't choose to be born there. If I could have chosen to be born somewhere, maybe it would have been a country with a little bit more oil. But that's what happened. And I gained experience from living there that's, directly involved with the fact that I've freaking lived there and am from there and hold the passport from there. So I'm sorry. It's where I grew up. Fuck you. So yeah, Tel Aviv.
Tel Aviv, the Middle Eastern capital. And I appreciate like a hard left turn. So whatever we were talking about before we hit record, like the fact that we just segue into this is great. So like
yeah, we need this.
We need this. And we've teased Tel Aviv a couple of times, I think, in some previous conversations. So just to be clear, like, did you grow up in Tel Aviv or around it or near it, other than the fact that it was like in Israel?
Yeah, no, I I grew up very far, probably the most far you can be from Tel Aviv. I grew up like in the middle of nowhere. I grew up really close to Egypt, so that was a vibe. But Tel Aviv, I always knew of it, and I obviously visited it.
What did that look like to you from far away?
Like the big city. It's like
Okay.
the New York of the poor.
What the fuck?
No, not New York of the poor, but it's like New York. It's like a big metropolis city, right? It's one of those, like, first of all, a lot of people, I was surprised to learn this in my travels. A lot of people think that Tel Aviv is the capital of Israel.
Oh, that's the joke. Okay. Really?
Yeah, no, I'm not even kidding. A lot of people think, well, they think we speak Israeli in Israel, and they think that Tel Aviv is the capital.
Israeli.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you for noticing what I did there. No, it's not. So the capital of Israel is Jerusalem. As far as I know, up to the date of this recording, Israel is still standing. I think I haven't gotten any like alerts on my phone.
I do not want to
And the
make a joke
capital
about that right now.
and the capital city of Jerusalem. No, I know you're backing off, but it's fine. You want to
You're
make a
on your
joke
own.
privately. Byron Mike does make those jokes privately. It's important for me too. Just not on this format. So yeah, no, Tel Aviv is just like this big city, and I moved there when I was really young, like too young to move somewhere. Um, so yeah, and I moved there and I lived there for about 9 years, I would say, and it was a hoot.
So it was a big part of like your growing up was I mean, 9 years. So you did live for several years like there. It was in the big city, adventures in the big city.
It was teenage adventures in the big city.
Oh
So
shit. That's where everything went off the rails.
oh yeah, 100%.
Okay. You think
100%.
you
That
think it would
was
have been you think it would have been different if you stayed in the faraway place? Like, do you think you would have because you asked me this too, and it's a good now it's coming back. Like, do you think you would have gotten into less trouble?
ooh. Um, I think the trouble I would get to would be more tragic and more
Oh.
boring, honestly. Like boring kind of tragic. You know what I mean? Because at
Mm-mm.
least in Tel Aviv, he does not know what I mean.
Please. No, because I want the examples.
God, I'm not even sure what I'm saying. I think Tel Aviv, well, okay, so where I grew up is like really small place, and I did end up having like my big relapse, which has led to this sobriety where I grew up.
Okay.
So I did blow that life up, and it was just really sad. In Tel Aviv, I can at least reminisce and say, oh, there were fun parts about it, you know, because Tel Aviv is it's big party city, big party scene, and it's kind of Sodom and Gomorrah,
Hmm,
honestly, like city.
that's pretty
It can
extreme.
be,
Yeah.
yeah, especially when you're like 14,
Especially when you're
roaming the
like
streets.
14, Sodom and Gomorrah at 14.
Oh man, the streets of Tel Aviv. No, I'm making it sound horrible, but I was in the scene. Um, I did get to do all the things you're not supposed to do, and because I look like 20 years older than what I actually am, apparently I was was able to go into all these clubs, underground clubs in Tel Aviv, and have a really disturbing time
Oh,
doing stuff.
so it's similar to okay, so like similar to the all access pass that like I kind of experienced. So this is like, this is not first world developed country like problems or even privilege. This is what we're talking about, like 14 and being able to like live the life of like what you see in American movies that's usually reserved for like young urban professionals.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
that kind of yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But I think it wasn't cool. Like looking back at it, I think that, I went to this like very artsy school, high school, very rooted in the arts, and there was all kinds of different cultures going on there, like more underground cultures and obviously I'm referring to drug cultures.
Yeah,
Um
yeah, I was gonna keep on asking until I was like underground. I kept on thinking like a rave,
yeah, like a rave, like a ballet rave.
a ballet rave with drugs.
Yeah. It's a
You're
what's it
like
called?
Black
Like a
Swan. Black Swan was autobiographical for me.
no. If anyone, no, I did not. No, I don't know how to dance like that. But yeah, so that was the experience that I had for a long time. It was very social and wild and drinking. Also, I remember just like I had like the drink that I liked and the cocktails and the fancy places and the weirdness of it all. And then yeah, I think as I got older, I got involved also with like different drugs and stronger liquor, and
Yeah.
then it became very much not a social cool like there was no illusion that it was a cool thing what I was doing anymore. Um
for
but I
you?
thought I was.
I was gonna
No.
say, because you still had company,
Oh
you were
man.
still surrounded by people as you were going through your descent.
No.
No? Oh no.
Towards the end, I can say that towards the end, Jesus Christ. Um, Towards the end of it,
It's
no,
fine.
I
Lean into it. Yeah, this is
yeah.
this is the language of our stories.
Okay. Towards the end, no, it was not. It's hard for me to go back and like look at my psyche at the time, but it was tragic, I think. Like the my thinking around it as well. There was no illusion. Even and again, even if I look back at those times and the parties and everything and you know, again, I'm not into those drugs. Like I feel like we are a generation of oxy, my generation, and
Oh.
we are not a generation that actually does all those like I don't know, we say uppers in Israel.
Oh, like meth
Uppers.
and cocaine?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I feel like it I dabbled in whatever it is I dabble. I'm not gonna go
Hmm.
into drugs too much, but the point being is that even looking back at those times, the party times, the times of like going up, high, it was also tragic for me. Like it was also like not. I don't want to say whatever. Did you say like Robert Downey Jr. Lesson Zero?
Lesson zero. Do it. Why not?
No, it was really just sad. It was just sad.
Like you felt sad. Yeah.
Yeah, and it looked
Uh,
sad, I'm sure.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I know the Walking Deadness of it. And I mean, when you say like, had you stayed in your original hometown or your hometown, um, you said that it's interesting. Like what I was trying to draw out is because you used the word tragic to describe how it could have been if you stayed there, and yet, the story that you actually did live in Tel Aviv was no less tragic, right? So I didn't want to guess or make an assumption, but I'm going to go ahead and do that because I need to close the loop. So had you stayed in the more rural thing, because it's a small
Yeah.
town, you think that you might have still gotten into trouble, but it would have been um, like teenage mom, now your world just got smaller and you're stuck there kind of trouble. Is that what you're talking about?
Jesus Christ, Mike.
Because that's when usually when I talk to people and they refer to it in those terms, that's the story that I hear. Like these are women who are
Mm,
saying like I lived in the suburbs far away from the city, and if I stayed there, I would have been just another statistic of someone who got pregnant and like had to work like some Walmart job, and then that would be the rest of my life. So I didn't know whether that was what you were going for or not.
yeah, first of all, it's important for me to say there's no Walmart in Israel. But the other thing is, no, I feel like it's more a matter of the playground. I had a really big playground in Tel Aviv.
I see.
And I think I see it now. Again, it's a weird way to even think about it, but having relapsed and caused a lot of mess and destruction in my community, it was much more tragic when it's people you know and grew up with rather than strangers. I mean,
Um,
hurt
yeah,
is
yeah,
hurt,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But it was different to do it with my family than it was to do it basically like one person in a big city.
Fair. Okay.
Yeah.
Because of the acquaintances that you meet there and that playground, they're so big. They're like very surface level relationships. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say. I mean, again, I've heard many people, and whatever I did, my hands drawing up my glasses motion. I don't know what to. But yeah, there was a lot of hurt in both places, so I think it was tragic nonetheless. And Tel Aviv is certainly a wonderful playground.
Yeah.
If you're looking forward to just living a life of havoc, because it is very much a party destination for a lot of people. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, you made,
yeah,
I mean, there have been jokes about like the startup culture and things. So it's all
yeah.
that big city cosmopolitan vibe, plus like the tourism and
Yeah, it's one of those things where, the bigger the city, the big, you know what they say, the bigger the city, the bigger the AA culture, whatever. Um, but yeah, I'm sure at some point we will get into the recovery culture. But it's a very
Right around the corner.
yeah, it's right around the corner. We're almost there, but you mentioned, the high tech of it all, and yeah, and I mentioned it too. It's very eclectic. Well, I guess you can say that about every city, but
Yeah.
it's a very weird vibe. Um, I was there. I'm not gonna say exactly when in the timeline, but I was there for a very short amount of time in already having left. And I remember being there and being like, this is so ridiculous. Like, what's going on? Like, this is such a weird city. It's like if San Francisco was like in the Middle East, but it was also Ibiza, but it was also like Arabia. Like, it's such a weird vibe. You have the people on the scooters in their like gym clothes, like going and having a smoothie, and like everything is tech, but also like you're in Israel, so like everything's fucked. And it's like very it's definitely one of those places where when people live there and are from there, it's like such a culture thing. It's like it's one of those cities that have so much culture to them
Yeah.
of like I am from Tel Aviv and this is what it means and I'm cool and I'm like this is what I don't know how to explain it. It's just such a personality of a place. It's
Yeah.
like unmistakable when you're there. The vibe that it puts out and the people that are there and yeah.
Would you say that it's like to the point where the personality, the vibe that it has is um is distinct and like actually it distinguishes itself from what you have experienced as like the general experience of living in Israel.
Oh, 100%.
So it's really like it's
Uh,
singular, it's its own. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's a bubble. It's commonly referred to as the state of Tel Aviv.
There
Um,
we go.
and when you live in Tel Aviv, and I remember having those thoughts, I'm like, oh, it's very much a New York thing. Like I don't go past the whatever this and that like
Mm-mm. Yeah.
straight. Like oh no, I don't go past. Why in God's name would I go past Allenby or whatever, like whatever street?
Gotcha. Yeah.
Um, because it's very yeah, it's just one of those things of like I don't leave the city, you know?
Yeah.
Like and like I
Familiar.
like it a lot on the one hand, on the other hand it's like utterly ridiculous and I have a lot of dismay towards the whole culture around it and I was very deep in a lot of those cultures, subcultures that you get in Tel Aviv, and like in
Oh,
every
like
big
what?
city. Like whether it's the health nuts, gym people, or the sober people, which have their own subgenres, or the party culture or the art scene. Um, like there's so much. It's like in every city, you kind of choose whatever associate with, but it definitely has this distinct culture that it's like it just it's hard for me to even explain. Yeah, it's just there's something very like very a lot of personalities and yet it's all united in the Tel Avivness of it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like okay, so 9 years there. Um, so you crashing into recovery, is that while you're in Tel Aviv or is that elsewhere?
That's Tel Aviv. Yes.
What was that like?
That's Tel Aviv. Uh oh man. First of all, it's taking me back to
I know, like
a long time ago,
I feel
honestly.
like you're getting increasingly uncomfortable. That's not the intention.
I am. I really am. There's something about it that makes me again, I've lived there and it's just the whole city in general. It was named after I left. It was named the most expensive city in the world, and it held that
Okay.
position for about a year. And it's also very hard to live there if you're not like if you don't work in high tech and make like crazy salaries. Um, so there's a lot of I guess resentment around that city. But let's go back to the recovery of it all. Um, of this whole story, I got sober in Tel Aviv the first time, and well, I had two stints of sobriety I can speak to. The first time, which ended up, in a relapse, of a very difficult experience, and the second one, which is this one. But I'm planning to break this one tomorrow, I would say. Yeah.
Excellent.
I'm gonna drink to okay, good.
It's nice to
I
have
lost the power of choice,
plans. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my weekend plans. Just gonna, oh man. No, thankfully through the power of whatever power there is out there, I'm neutral around alcohol. So also I say that in the same time, like I don't like being around alcohol. It's like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I recoil from it more than anything.
Oh, nice. Yes.
Yeah, I
That's a
just
difference.
don't. Yeah, no, you know what? No, I'm not neutral. I kind of find it gross. Like, I don't know, whatever. I threw up way too much to not find it gross to relapse. It's the gift that God has given me in like alcohol poisoning. The gift of alcohol poisoning. Could this be? So tight.
That's part of my, I mean, I don't, that's part of my selective memory. Like when I think about it, because once you said that, of course, the tape starts playing in my head. Like, how many times have I thrown up? And I'm like, ignored it largely, or else I wouldn't have gone back.
Dude, like, oh man. Yeah, I'm not gonna get into the throw up of it all, but yeah, don't get me started. So I have a weak stomach. The point is, and I'm gonna try and talk about recovery kind of in the mirror of Tel Aviv.
Oh,
And I have this memory now, which I completely forgot about. So Tel Aviv and Israel in general, and the Middle East as a whole has NA. It does not to say that there is an AA in Israel, but NA is the big thing in the
hmm.
Middle East. And I'm sure I've said this on this podcast. So regardless of how it happened, whatever, I was encouraged to go to a group, and it's the big group in Tel Aviv. So there's a lot of groups in Tel Aviv. There's two really big famous ones of
Hmm.
NA. One is in Rothschild Street, which is very famous, Tel Aviv Street, and the other one is extremely close to it's embarrassing, you're forgetting the name of the street. It's extremely close to the corner of
I mean, is it the street that you never like crossed? Because then it's okay to ignore it. That's where we
you
don't
know,
want to
that's
be.
that's embarrassing. That goes to show how long I haven't been there that I don't remember the name of the street. No, it was where Dizengoff meets Ben Yehuda, basically, street. But it's also very close to City Hall, to Tel Aviv City Hall. So the plan was to meet a friend in City Hall and walk to the meeting because I was terrified to go alone to the meeting because I'm like, fucking, the narcos in there, the fucking drug addicts. I don't want to be mixed up with the drug addicts.
This was
I
your
was
first
scared.
meeting. Oh, so you're, fuck, why am I gonna? Because they do this to me here and it bothers me. I have no other language for it though. You were a walk-in, like your first meeting?
The fuck's a walk-in?
Well,
What do you
here
mean?
they use it to distinguish the people who like are attending meetings because they were rehabbed as a verb, like they were sent
Oh,
to, right?
oh, oh.
Versus like somebody who goes in voluntarily.
So I went voluntarily the first time, and then the second time it was after stints in rehab. So I guess I had the best of both worlds.
Nice.
In Israel, it's like you either got clean in rehab or you got clean on the tables, it's called. Like
Oh,
the
I like
tables
that.
of the room.
Yeah.
Uh, it's fine.
Can you send someone to rehab in the same, like in here, you can send people to rehab. Can you do that there?
What, like a sentence?
Like your family sends, there are stories of like, yeah, your family will send people in white coats to come pick you up and then you're in rehab.
Um, I'm not sure. I know that there's like an alternative to being arrested, which is rehab,
Okay.
basically.
All right.
Um,
So yeah, so
no,
anyway,
I
you were voluntary.
yeah, I met a friend, and now I remember where we met. We met next to City Hall, and famously, the City Hall in Tel Aviv is basically in the entrance. There is a big memorial for Rabin, the prime minister who was assassinated. So I met her at the Rabin Memorial. I guess it's where we meet or whatever. But I remember sitting there now, and I completely forgot about it. Like all these, I remember sitting there and looking at there's like they sectioned some of the wall that still has the graffiti on it and everything, and It's interesting to me that I remember it now. It's a very interesting place in Tel Aviv, to me at least. And we met there, and yeah, and I went in and I got cleaner or got slowly got indoctrinated into the cult of NA. And I relapsed, and then I got clean again through rehab, and then I really got indoctrinated into the cult of NA. It's definitely a vibe there, a very fellowship, social, based on social kind of thing. There is a
Yeah.
meeting in Rothschild that takes place at, I don't know if it's 12 at night or 10, but it's basically a social event more than a meeting. And I talked to a friend about it today from Israel about meetings, and I honestly kind of had the discussion with him about why we go to meetings and just everything around it. And he answered very, very eloquently and beautifully about what he feels his parties and going to meetings. But we kind of remembered together all those times where we, went to a meeting every day or several times a day and were part of this like fellowship culture of doing everything together. And it was too much. It was my whole life. And yeah, it took a toll.
What was that like though? Because I mean, obviously, when you talk about it now, you're in a different place, right? And um, that like the tone that you take now, when you recall those times, it comes out of the fact that it failed. It wasn't sustainable, right? And so you're in a different spot in your recovery now. But at that time, if you go back to it, like when you were still in Tel Aviv and still in
Mhm.
that fellowship culture, what was it like for you? Was it actually working? Was it exciting? Because,
Mhm.
I mean, I'll just contrast it. Like
Yeah.
when I was, so I struggled with it the entire time. I struggled with it the entire time. Like when I got sober in LA, like it seemed very, my sponsor was good at taking me to conventions. I went to like an Ikipa convention my first year there, and just so I could see how big the fellowship could be and how exciting it could be. But I struggled with the whole like get in the middle of the herd bullshit because it didn't feel natural to me. And I was afraid and I was intimidated and I felt other for years. So that I never really got comfortable with um, with the big fellowship scene that was present where I got sober. Um,
Well,
like I didn't relapse over it in terms of like drinking, but there were a couple times when like the suicidal ideations like got really, really strong, and I didn't understand why because I thought that the time sober that I had should have made me like immune to it, right? Which is wrong.
yeah.
So these are the
Yeah.
things that necessitated the change for me.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know whether when you think about your time in Tel Aviv, like in that, like, did you enjoy it? Was it easy for you? Did it work?
Interesting. I think there are several points. The first one I want to make and I want to preface is that I got introduced to it. I relapsed. I went to rehab. I got introduced to some principles and the program, and it did save my life, at the time. And I cannot, completely dismiss it, but I'm about to, basically, because no, I think that the frustration stems from the fact that the solution is not presented there to people.
Yeah.
Or if it is presented there to people, it's presented in such a way where you will be miserable for a very, very, very long time. And maybe that's a general critique of NA and the way that step work is done there. Um, but I wanted to kill myself.
Okay.
I was utterly miserable. I was amongst a lot of people, and I was grateful because I did have good people in my life. Um, and I very much dabbled in the fellowship culture and did the things and went to the other things and whatever and did the service commitment and the yada 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 and attended business meetings. But at the end of the day, it wasn't. Yeah, it's hard for me to explain. Like, yeah, I was clean, but I was not. I was not recovered.
Hmm.
Like I was 100% no, and it was it came. I think me being clean came from fear and a culture that is just rooted in yeah, just almost like a scare tactic,
Yes, the fear.
Yeah. And again, healthy fear, sorry. Healthy fear is good. Um, I think, but it was not a healthy fear or culture, I think. And I do have a lot of critique about the fact that it is extremely, if not entirely, fellowship based. It takes years to work steps. I had to move to the other side of the world and then by accident meet someone who actually took me through the thing. And then actually accidentally meet the people and and whatever, and get involved in like the other side of, I don't know, I sound like a weirdo, like the other side of AA.
The other side.
The one that we're at.
Oh.
The correct side.
The correct side.
The self-righteous girl. No, like the working out of the book and whatever. The people who call themselves recovered despite many
Yeah. Did you
many what's the word I'm looking for? Many objections.
did you meet those people early on, like in your early on fellowship experience? Do you recall meeting people who had that, that light of life in recovery about them already? I mean, no, because
I don't
I can
know.
say,
I don't know, yeah.
I think I did. I mean, I'm pretty convinced I did. The memories are hazy, but because not too long ago, so the meeting where you and I met, um, we were talking about a vision for you, right? And so some people were sharing about that over at Black Rhinos International Big Book Study. That's a
Yes,
plug.
this is our home group. Come visit.
So it's a good group. So we were talking about it, and so personally, one of the parts that I love in that chapter is, and it's clear that I love it, right? Because it's about the boy whistling in the dark, and we smile at such a Sally. Um, and early on in my recovery experience, I found a lot of other Sallys to like hang around. Um, I think that I did meet people who were recovered and they had this powerful experience happening in their lives, or that had happened in their lives, and there was so much life and energy, and they were trying to present the solution to me.
Yeah.
But I was so intimidated,
Hmm.
and I didn't want to do the work. There was so much resistance, right? I was so intimidated, and there was so much resistance that it was easy. It was so much easier for me in a fellowship to turn around, go to people who I knew, and they're like, "Yeah, don't talk to those people. They're crazy." and and
Yeah.
then just hang around and find more people like that who are just like me, just like the person in that part of the big book, like secretly giving anything to have another drink again. And I thought that that was normal. I thought that that was the thing. It's like, okay, so it's completely normal, just like these other people are, to still have um, this obsession. But then that's why we're attending meetings and we're having a good
Yeah.
time together and taking commitments all the time, because that's how I'm going to be fighting the obsession. And I thought that was, the name of the game. I thought that was, as long as I could have fun that way, this is how I stay sober. Um, until enough time passed and I was miserable enough where it was like, this is not going to fucking work. I'm going to die. I'm going to die because there's no
Yeah.
real hope here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's you really hit the nail on the head there. That's the way it was presented to me too. Again, not to say that there aren't recovered people in Israel. I'm sure there are, but it seems to be very much the popular culture. Also, I would say if the workbook that you work with and it takes you years to move through around the steps, then that doesn't make sense to me. Um, in terms of recovering, and so many people you go, when, as you do when you're part of big fellowship, you see people coming, you see people die, and then you see other people say that they had lack of willingness. Maybe they just were real alcoholics and actually needed the solution, but you told them whatever, stick and stay, or I was told to stick to the winners and I did, and the winners were people who had a group with like 30 other men where they worked steps once every 2 weeks for 3 years. and takes them 3 years to whatever, complete a round of steps. And then they would go to, a meeting every day and take up a service commitment. And
Yep.
I wanted, I wanted something else. I don't know what exactly led me to get on a plane against all popular advice. And I remember my first year. So in Israel, there's another thing that I am very critical of. And again, I think that through the years there has been a warping of what the message of AA is and what the program is. I think you can very much see it through different cultures in how do I say this? Through different meeting cultures, but you can definitely see it in Israel when you get some time there, like a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever. They celebrate you. They basically throw you a party in the room and you have to speak for like 20, 30 minutes. And every one of your friends comes and one gives you a chip and one gives you a coin. And it's a celebration of self like never before seen. This is why now if I want a coin, I sneak after the meeting and I just take one. I ask the thing. No, I don't steal coins. They will be unrecovered. They'll be very unrecovered. No, I just hey, can I have this from the chairperson? But I remember I had a big celebration of self and I was just like, I hate this. I hate you. I really hate this. I'm not happy at all, but I'm grateful because I was taught to be grateful, but I was
to be grateful.
Yes, it was a very difficult time. I went from really wanting to kill myself to not being able to feel anything. And thinking about that. Geez, Louise, what can I say? And I left, and and I left.
Left Tel Aviv.
Left Israel.
Oh yeah, okay. Yes, you did.
Yeah, now we're here. But yeah, I would say that living Israel, there's different perspectives and different things, and it is unique what's going on in Israel, where you are a part of a majority in meetings, a Jewish majority, and here, not so much. And can Jewish people recover? I don't know. I guess yes, because there's a whole other culture that exists in diaspora, at least in AA, at least with the Jews I did get to meet, of is AA too Christian for us? Or, will this work for us?
Yeah.
Or being the minority in these meetings. So it's a different conversation to have. And I remember I was a few months back, I had a really hard time in meetings here for different reasons. And my sponsor suggested, hey, maybe you should, look into a meeting in Israel. I'm like, yeah, I will do that. So I logged into Zoom to a meeting in Israel. And on the one hand, it was all Jews and they're all going through whatever they're going through with what's going on back home. And at the other time, no solution. It does not exist. There's just me talking about my shit to just basically people who are unauthorized to do group therapy doing
It's group therapy. Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I don't know how. And so that was the experience.
That touches on and that can be, so for me, right, that is a challenge now with groups because before I got to the place where I am now, the idea was drilled into me that if I was uncomfortable in a certain group or meeting,
you should go to that fucking group.
Keep on going. Yeah, exactly. Don't stay so fucking focused on what the group can do for you. Think of how you can be helpful to the group and what you can bring to the meeting. And so,
what is this patriotism of groups? I'm sorry, were you born in group land? Think not of what you can do to the group can do for you. Think what you can do for the group. I mean, yes.
It's very propaganda.
Not to be an asshole.
No.
But it's a cult thing. I'm sorry.
No,
why am I an adult? And that's, I think, my problem. And I'm struggling with this, to reconcile between where I can be helpful and where I have the right to just, for lack of a better word, self-determination. I'm going to shoot myself in the head.
Well, it's very because, I mean, I don't know how big of this how big this is in your experience, but there's also the fuck your feelings line that I came across so much. And so if I was uncomfortable in a group, if I was uncomfortable in life, like fuck your feelings, like fuck your feelings. They don't, it comes from, I kind of get now where it comes from, but it turned into this thing that's just so dismissive of any kind of an experience that I might be having simply because I quote unquote haven't been sober long enough. And so in terms of the group, like I was encouraged to keep people like to stay in it, even though I was uncomfortable. And today, the contrast is like when I have left a couple of groups that for whatever reason, because well, God wills it or God allows it to happen. God allows it to happen. It ended up being that those groups turned into more group therapy as opposed to solution. And try as I might to do my part to bring the message into it. It's just not something that like some people were interested in, and that's fine. So I needed to like I after struggling with it for a bit and being hard on myself, like why can't I let it go? I mean, the more practical answer is like, well, there's many other places where I could go to try to carry the message. And so you probably won't get this reference, but like in the 80s, there were shows like the two that I remember was like Highway to Heaven and The Incredible Hulk, where it was just like this do-gooder guy. Every episode is like they go to a different small town, help some people, change some lives, and then like the end credits is them on some highway, like hitchhiking or going somewhere else, and then the next town. And so, not to get like too into ego or self-righteous about it, but it was helpful for me to kind of adopt the same attitude to myself, like, okay, we're going to try to be helpful here, and then after we're done, then we just move on to the next town or group and try to carry the message there. I don't have to be like, you know, the insane voice for change, to try to turn the group into what I think it should be.
Definitely the AA version of party hopping, hey?
Nice. Yeah, I
Nice,
guess
there you
so.
saw.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know, man. It's yeah, I guess there's the responsibility and that we have, and at the same time, where I was at the time was very much like, oh, am I? And seeing especially those older people in the meeting, again, not ageist in any way, but people who have been sober for like 30 years, which is the most you have, and they are treated like literal gods in Israel. Of like, oh, um, like we go here every day. I
Yeah.
didn't want to go there every day. I was really young and I wanted something else, and fortunately I was able to kind of, things changed for me. But also, I, it's very young in Israel, and I believe, from what I know, the information I have, AA came to Israel in 1976. NA came to Israel in the 80s.
Okay.
And I'm not sure what it is about the Middle East, but NA is so much more big than AA is. I have no idea, and I cannot tell you or testify about AA culture in Israel because I was never a part of it. I know it exists. I know there's a big English speaking culture in like AA culture in Tel Aviv, which makes total sense because it's a big international city. I remember when I went back to Tel Aviv. Again, I was in Israel for a short amount of time, and I'm just like, oh yeah, everyone speaks English here. It's like, I'm like, am I not in the States right now? It's such a, international city as well. So yeah, big, it was brought by, apparently, again, from what I know, I heard about the history from immigrants from South Africa and from United Nation personnel
Oh,
to Israel.
okay.
Um,
AA was.
AA was, I believe, NA, and I remember this myth from the rooms of NA, was this Israeli actress or some sort of artist who went to the States and brought back NA with all of its just utter. I feel like the NA basic text is like what happens when you give Chat GPT too many prompts. Like like it starts being really nonsensical about shit. So that's, I think, the NA program. And then in Israel, it got completely, again, fucked. Like, and I only saw that once I left. Like, why do we sing to each other when we have a year? Why do we sing? If you have a month, why does the entire room sing to you? What is this? Like, what is all these like subcultures of like at the end, it's an hour and a half, and then the end of the meeting, you get to like raise your hand, and if you have a specific problem, you get to ask the room to pray about your problem, or like or
Oh,
either
I know
it's
that
called
one.
like, is that a thing? It's like they
I
get the room to ask like if you have prayers or problems or good things you want to share.
I've seen that I mean, I can't tell you. It's probably just been like a handful of meetings, or else I would remember it more easily. I would recall it more easily. But I have been to at least one meeting where they did that. And then, with the songs and the chanting. Like, so do you mean a song that is in addition to or other than Happy Birthday? Like there's other songs that you guys sing?
Oh, darling, Happy Birthday does not exist. It's 3 songs that are just like folk, Israeli, Jewish songs
Oh,
from the Bible, or
nice.
then stuff that were invented in, I believe, NA. And then you have, which is the worst one that I can't believe I didn't touch on this sooner. It's the Declaration of Clean Days, where every person in the room raises their hand by the power of God and my sponsor and you guys and the fellowship, and they go on and on and on. I have this and this many days clean today, and everyone claps and he goes and he hugs the host. That takes 45 minutes away from the meeting, not
I'm
including probably
sure.
the formats. This is so, and I'm like, oh God, it's just the worst. And everyone makes like a little speech before about why they're clean, and they thank whatever their sponsor and their step group and the rabbi. No, never the rabbi. Oh man.
It comes from like
Um,
it comes from like a good place, right? Because I am fine with the idea
celebration
of
of ego.
celebrating the miracle. And then when it turns into like an award acceptance speech, and it turns into what you said, it's like the
Yeah.
celebration of the ego and how did you do it, right? And how did you do it? But I mean, going back to like the origins of it, I think so. My understanding from talking to people here in the Philippines is something similar because NA is a much bigger fellowship here than AA, I find. And it seems like there's a similar. You mentioned that there was an actress who went somewhere else and then brought it back.
Yeah.
What I've heard is there are also some Filipinos that went somewhere else and then got educated or whatever, and then came back. And there's also a big rehab culture here.
Yeah.
But that the local going somewhere and then taking it back seems to have made it so that it was more readily accepted, and it grew faster than AA did, which AA, similar to what you described, was brought by foreigners. So
Yeah, yeah,
maybe it
yeah.
has a lot to do with
Interesting.
that.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think there's almost like a claiming of the culture over NA, as you, at least that's what I'm deducting from it. And again, it's very weird to me, the Middle East thing. I know that the biggest NA meeting that ever took place, it's like a stadium in Iran. Like
Wow.
perhaps it's like, I'm not sure what it is. Maybe, and I know there's drinking in Israel, right? There's drinking anywhere, but maybe it's because it's a hotter country.
Hmm.
Um, Unsure about the details of it, but interesting stuff. And as you mentioned, it seems to be, more of the people. At least again, and I've said this in this format as well. AA always seemed to me like the things I've heard about it is that it's not for us, or
Hmm.
whatever. Um, I'm not, yeah, I'm not sure.
Us meaning like you know, the country that you're in, like whether it's like us native
No,
is people of
like
Israel.
the drug addicts,
Oh, like that. Yeah.
like the, yeah, the fucked up drug addicts or whatever. But yeah, yeah, yeah. It's such a culture thing. I don't know. Like, and again, I mentioned this before, that meetings in Israel take place, NA meetings exclusively in bomb shelters. Um,
Exclusively.
yeah, I have not seen an NA meeting. Let me think about this. No, no,
Okay.
I have not seen an NA meeting. Probably someone like a friend from Israel is going to be like, "Yeah, fuck you, you lie. We were actually at this meeting that was not in a bomb shelter, but I cannot remember now. Out of the three big meetings that exist in NA meetings that exist in Tel Aviv, and again, you have like 3 meetings a day at 3 different locations, and probably some more now. And other meetings I went to throughout Israel, they were always in bomb shelters. So no shit, I remember one now that was not. You see, there we go. But that one was discontinued like very quickly.
Yeah.
So they are in bomb shelters, so it's a very specific vibe, yeah.
That's good. That's good that you caught that. So the person composing like the message or email needs to stop and take a
Yeah, I
chill.
know about the other meeting and like that part of Tel Aviv, okay? Like I know, and it was discontinued for like very justified reasons. Okay, we all know why. But it was yeah, so it's a vibe. It's a vibe, and it's just funny to me. Like when you do have it's funny to me when you have like rocket alarms in Tel Aviv to know that like when people go down to certain bomb shelters, they would have like slogans on the walls and like shit coffee and like 12 steps and 12 traditions, like
Oh, it's
posters.
meeting ready. Oh, I didn't even make that connection. That is wild.
Oh yeah, no, it's fully like it has like slogans and
Yeah.
posters and like closets with all the literature and the keychains and
Yeah.
yeah, everything. Yeah, yeah.
I kind of get a sense for what you're talking about then. So if a lot of the experience that you had in Israel was yeah, there are alarms that go off, right? And then there's a procedure, and then people will take shelter. But then you have this like big city like Tel Aviv where people are walking around leading the Starbucks life, right? And whatever that looks like.
There's no Starbucks in Israel.
Oh well, you know
Important to
what?
say as well.
Okay, well, you know what I mean, like the
Yeah,
startup
yeah, yeah.
life, the techie life, and
Yeah.
then the same alarms go off. It's a different picture. It's a different set of people that you wouldn't like usually imagine would have to then like take shelter.
Hmm.
Yeah, because if you're
Yeah,
saying like it
I
looks like San
guess.
Francisco meets this, meets that, then that I picture a very different set of people than what I as someone who doesn't live in Israel like would picture like an everyday Israel life, and then to have those people subject to the same like drills. I get your point. Like it's like to say it's a different vibe is it's very
Yeah,
different.
but you get desensitized to it. That's the wild thing. Like I it was so normal to me. And until I left, I didn't understand how like abnormal it is. I mean, I had a sense, I think a little bit, but I
Mm.
really when I left and I started sharing my experience with people and they were like, "Oh, like you went through that, like you experienced that." Um and I remember the first time I was quite old the first time that I heard a rocket alarm because I never lived in an area where there were rocket alarms. And then when rockets started becoming more long range and flying over
Mm.
Tel Aviv, and then it became routine for Tel Aviv as well to be part of everything. And um, yeah, I remember vividly just everything about the first one I experienced. That was a very scary one because there wasn't a bomb shelter around, so you have to like lay on the ground with your hand, like on the road. It was like with your hands on your head, and I remember I started crying.
I
So
mean,
I was like 14. I'm like I'm too young for this, is what I thought.
yeah.
Um, shit, sorry, and I'm super desensitized to it, but apparently not so much. Um, but yeah, bomb shelters. Now that I'm out of it, it's yeah, and everything that happened. Yeah, bomb shelters in Tel Aviv. Yeah, it's a thing. We're used to it. There were several stories that I heard from friends. There was a terrorist infiltration prior to October the 7th in Tel Aviv. I can't remember when it was, but it was people did get locked themselves down in bomb shelters, and it happened in the NA meeting that I took part of.
Mm.
And they basically barricaded, like people came and they closed the door. But there's so many stories about, and I can attest to some of them, and some of my friends in Israel can attest to other ones of sober people and what they went through. And the sober people who were a part of Nova, because Israel has a big, we have a big culture of like sober trance music that was started by 2 NA members in Israel. And so there were a lot of sober people in Nova. Some survived, some didn't.
Yeah.
So it's a whole, yeah, not sure what else to say about that.
Yeah. It's not something that's easy to put into words.
No, it's not. It's definitely weird, to feel like you have recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body, and you were given this gift and this God and whatever, and then some other people got to do that as well, but they,
yeah,
what's the difference between me and them? None at all, honestly. So yeah, I don't know how to segue from this. I don't know how to
I
segue
know.
from this.
I know. Okay.
Because I can't. Do you want me to do the segue? Would it be easier?
I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of the hard left turn. So, right, if we, let's go back to the sunnier sides of Tel Aviv. And
Yes,
as we've been
try.
asking, as we've been asking a lot of our recent guests that we've been blessed with, we'll do 3 questions so you can give us your tour guide map of the city we're talking about. If we were to do a culinary tour for a day of Tel Aviv, you were bringing us around, what would that look like?
Okay, 2 things. One, can this be like a 2-parter episode? Because I can just talk about that. And secondly, can I also do a tour that includes like the real Tel Aviv, which is like, getting stuck in bomb shelters and like hearing rockets exploding and
Yes, and yes.
I always thought that if I like get stuck. So my biggest nightmare, there it is. I remember this now. So at the end of the meeting, I love that I'm remembering this now and not answering your question, but I have this like nightmare that I will get forgotten in the NA room, and like that I will get stuck. And it was something that started for me like this irrational fear in Israel, because like I was really worried that I was gonna go to the bathroom and the other person's gonna lock me in the bomb shelter, like the person with the key. And now it's a good place to be because there is a bathroom. If it's a big bomb shelter, there will be a bathroom.
Yeah.
And there will be like supplies and shit. But I'm like, I don't want to go to sleep in the NA room.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I mean the bomb shelter, because I was going to say, like, for those who are listening, if you're not paying attention, like, this is why it becomes a nightmare, because the NA room is a bomb shelter that you could actually get locked in.
Who wants to get locked in the fucking NA room, dude? What would you read for like entertainment? Living Clean, which is the worst version of living sober, if such a thing were ever to exist.
I don't know.
In Hebrew? I think. Okay, culinary tour, Jesus. Can you hear the reggaeton that is like blasting right now from my
Sometimes I wish I could,
apartment?
but no, we no.
Okay, if anyone wants to hit me up and hear my like resentment over my neighbor's reggaeton because I don't sleep at night, hit me up. So, culinary tour of Tel Aviv. Fuck, this is so good. Okay, mind you that I haven't been there in a long time, so some of these places may be closed. Immediately, I would go with someone to Carmel Market, Shuka Carmel, which is just the best. I immediately eat like a full, like shawarma, like a full-on lafa, like a tortilla. I don't know how to say it in English, like a full-on Lafa shawarma, or like there's some really awesome places in Shuka Carmel that do like just deconstructed shawarma, and it's just
Oh,
it's just so good. Maybe I would start the day actually in Tel Aviv port with like a herring sandwich with some butter and herring and like just pickled herring, very Jewish, amazing. Then I would go to Shuka Carmel, right? And I would have like just the full like shawarma, pita, hummus thing there. There's other places that are really, really good. There's a place in south of Tel Aviv, a Turkish shawarma place.
you said
Amazing. I'm a
hummus.
shawarma girl. Did I say hummus? Shame on me. You should find a new co-host.
Never.
Um, or oh, what else am I thinking? Oh, Sabich Frischman. You have to go and have Sabich Frischman. Either I mean, you could do it in Jaffa. They have several like franchises like throughout the city, but there's one on Dizengoff. That's the one I like. It has just the most insane line in the world. Sabich Frischman to have some sabich, Shuka Carmel for whatever you want. There's a place called Panda Pita in Shuka Carmel, and this is totally a plug, and they do the most amazing like shawarma, in a pita. Just so good. ¿Qué más? There's so much. The thing is about Israel, there's so much like world food because there's representation of everything. But I would do more of a Middle Eastern thing probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or maybe maybe start the day also with like a nice shakshuka somewhere. Like there's a lot of shakshuka. Doctor Shakshuka. Go to Doctor Shakshuka, which is a person actually. That's his like. He calls himself Dr. Shakshuka. Go and have shakshuka at, at this restaurant.
Actually, so
Yeah.
you mentioned, okay, so we're talking about, I mean, the Middle Eastern food for me is like or Middle Eastern cuisine is no brainer, but you talk about the representation in so many different types. Like you can say that for a lot of places, right? Where like here, we'll have, it's not just Filipino restaurants, like we'll have obviously like other cuisines from other parts of the world represented. Doesn't mean they're any good though. Subjective. So in your estimation, if there's a lot of diverse representation in Tel Aviv in
Mm-hmm.
terms of like world food, and if they're all top notch, what do you think about Tel Aviv, Israel, makes it so that the food can be so good, even if it's from like other parts of the world?
Hmm. That's really interesting because when I talk to people about going to Tel Aviv or traveling and going to Israel, and I have a lot of friends who I'm like, I gave the, whole list of what to do in Israel because I am passionate about just the different things you can see there. There is something that people have been saying repeatedly that I've heard from them, from tourists, that it has probably some of the best food in the world is in Tel Aviv. Uh, I don't really know how to explain it. I don't think it's something, I don't think it stems from the land of milk and honey or whatever. I think there's just a big representation of a lot of different cultures, a lot of people,
Mm.
immigrating there, making aliyah there, and it's all kind of mishmash together, and just world-class restaurants. Yeah. So, just some really awesome food places. I would finish the day um, in Tel Aviv. I mean, there's so much to do in Tel Aviv. I mean, the beach line is incredible, but I would go to Yaffo, and I would go to Hajbek, which is in Jaffo. It's really close to Haj Krel, where I used to get my meat and my fish from there. But they have knafe there, which is just have some knafe and black Arabic coffee, and then go and watch the sunset over Jaffo, and you would just die happy. Yeah, that was a really long answer, but I have been in so many places, and food in Tel Aviv, hands down, has been food in Israel in general, but in Tel Aviv has been just the most incredible, just the best thing I've ever had. Yeah.
That's a strong endorsement. I mean, I thought
Yeah.
you were going to say something about the quality of the produce, because,
Yeah.
right? Because that helps. I mean, I don't have a good example for here, but I know that, yeah, I mean, the produce that we have here is relative to some other places that just I've been. has been better, and that seems to lend itself to the output.
Yeah. I didn't want to get into that territory because I feel like it can sound a little weird, but I feel like blah, blah, blah. Israel has really strong agriculture culture.
Yeah.
A lot of villages are based on just agriculture, and also there's something about the Mediterranean soil. Things grow really nice in whatever in the Levant. They just do. Like you can look at the whole of the Mediterranean and the type of cuisine and the type of diet they eat. Tel Aviv is considered the vegetarian capital of the world. There's the most vegetarian restaurants per whatever capita per, and it's just it's very good food. So yeah, eat, enjoy. If you drink, there's great. There's some really strong drinks in Israel, dude. Arak will fuck you up. That's, I don't know if you ever had arak, if you ever had the pleasure in your time. I would say just go back from retirement. It's like straight up
just for
alcohol
that.
poisoning. There's no middle ground when you have a shot of arak.
Second question, favorite spot. Would that be where we watch the sunset or somewhere else?
That's a very difficult thing to answer when it comes to Tel Aviv. So the easiest answer would be to say like a beach or where you'd watch the sunset in Jaffa. But I lived in the old north of Tel Aviv, so I'm a very big fan of the Park Yarkon, the Yarkon Park, which is our central park probably. It's also just very big. It spans, it goes out of Tel Aviv as well. Not that I ever went out of Tel Aviv, but there's some really nice spots on the Yarkon Park with the river where they, dump bodies and all that. So
it sounds pleasant. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really nice. Yeah, the old north of Tel Aviv is where it's at. If you know, you know.
Okay, so like the questions are progressing in difficulty, then let's see how this one works out. Third question, if you're going to sum up the Tel Aviv experience in a couple sentences, what would that look like?
I wish I would have prepared because I know that these are the questions we're going to ask, and yet I haven't prepared.
And mind you, these are the questions that you came up with.
Yeah, I literally wrote the questions. Never to think I'll actually. Okay. If I could summarize Tel Aviv in one word, it's a culturally diverse major capital of the Middle East.
That sounds like a good way to put it.
Yeah, dude. Tel Aviv pride. Come visit.
Book your tickets now.
Don't.